Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about controlling the OPZ using an external keyboard. I always intended to use my OPZ this way, both because I thought it would give me greater range, which obviously it does, and because these buttons never seem to me like buttons that you'd want to actually play music on or make real chord shapes on. I still love the buttons, but I don't think that they're meant to be used as a keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 different ways that you could connect your external keyboard, and then I'm also going to go over just a review of the MIDI settings, then I'll talk about some issues I've had with Bluetooth. Okay, so MIDI settings review. I'm going to hold down metronome and screen. I have none of them enabled, so nothing's coming up. But as a quick review, 1 means that channel 1 goes to the active track, and assuming that the active track, has MIDI enabled. 2 is MIDI toggles MIDI in. 3, MIDI out, clock in, clock out. So channel 1 to active track, in, out, in, out. If you're following along with this tutorial, you definitely want 2 on. For my setup, where I've always intended for the keyboard to be on to control whatever the active track is on the OPZ, you also want 1 in. If you're going to be using it as a clock, you of course need 4 to be enabled too. I'm not going to be doing that though. You also need to enable all the tracks that you plan to have to receive MIDI. So I'm only going to use the synth tracks. Let's get on to the ways that you can actually connect these two. So we're already on the chords track, and you do not need an OP1. In fact, I don't use an OP1 as my keyboard most of the time. For the OPZ, I use an 88-key piano. It just fits on the screen a little bit easier, or the OP1 does. So I've got a USB Mini B here, and I've got a USB-C here. If I plug this in, I'm going to be looking at the 16th step. You want it to flash green. If it flashes green and then red, it means that it tried to connect and it disconnected, I think. If it flashes red, it means something disconnected. If nothing happens, sometimes it still did connect, but you just want those green lights to flash. So they should happen because I've tested this before. Yeah, so that means that we are connected. The downside is it is now sending power to the OP1, and it's actually sending quite a bit of power to the OP1, and there doesn't really seem to be an easy way of fully disabling that. So that's one of the downsides of this type of connection. It also sometimes takes a few tries. You may have to, spend a while. And actually, let me show you the red lights there. Or not. So, and part of my point here, there we go. Part of my point is that it doesn't always act the way that you might expect. And so you might need to just give it a few tries. So if you first plug it in and it just doesn't work, don't lose hope initially. Try a few more times and then consider losing hope. That might be a good time to lose hope. You can also, of course, reach out to Teenage Engineering or, make a post on OP forums or something and see if someone can help you. Anyway, just to demonstrate. So it reacts pretty well, I think. And it's, pretty easy to move between tracks and still use the keyboard for it. Okay, so another way of doing this is I'm going to use a CME WIDI U-host. And so first of all, this requires separate USB power. So I've got it plugged into a wall adapter. And then next, I'm going to use that same cable that I just used actually to connect the OP1 to the WIDI U-host. And the WIDI U-host is, first of all, if you look at the pictures, it is much larger compared to the OPZ than in their marketing pictures, and the WIDI jack is too. You can't easily fit these on the back. I'd put Velcro hoping, but it's too awkward. Okay, connecting these two. Turn your OPZ over and press that button that you'd use to connect to the app. If it's flashing blue, that means it's searching. Once it goes solid green, that'll mean it's connected to the other. So it went solid green. If I were to disconnect this, it would flash red. Let's give that a try, even though it might take a bit for us to get back. Oops. I don't know if you can see that, but it did flash red. So I went ahead and I plugged it back in, and good, they're already connected. I find this to also just be very fast. Just as fast as directly being connected. I find there to be almost no latency in my experience, though I'm also not a performer, so I might not be the one to actually notice that sort of thing. But I find this to be a stable connection one-on-one. There's a big caveat to that I'll talk about after I go through the next section, but I just wanted to say I like this because it's quick. You don't have to have an extra cable, and it's also I haven't noticed any difference in the battery life. So I just find this to be very convenient because also, in addition to this, you could connect a USB, something external through USB or through the line module on top of having this BLE connection. So just another reason why I never really got into using the app very much. Okay, so we've covered the USB and the Bluetooth. So let's talk about the line module. I'm not going to go into a ton of depth here. I will say that the line module works basically instantly. So if I plug in anything 3.5 millimeter here, it'll just immediately start receiving MIDI and reacting to it, or transmitting MIDI. So this is one very quick way that you could do things. As a heads up, there are a couple of types of TRS, which is this 3.5 millimeter. That's what this type of MIDI is called because of the type of connector that you use, the type of jack that you use. There are two different types of TRS MIDI. There's type A and type B. The OPZ is type A. I don't understand a lot about that, but I do understand that if you try to use the type A with a type B, it's not going to work. So if you're noticing that this isn't working with something, even though you're sure that you've got the settings right and you're sure you've got the connections right, it may be an issue related to the type A versus type B. And there are some adapters out there and stuff. So in that case, I don't know, lose hope just a little bit, not much. So that would be great news. Anyway, I have used this as outgoing MIDI, and in fact I'm very partial to that, so I'll show that in a future video. And I found this to just be probably the most reliable. I haven't noticed any difference in battery life either. Okay, last thing I want to go over is the Bluetooth stuff I talked about. So I went all in on CME WIDI products. I'm not affiliated with them, which will become obvious in a second. And I found them to be great one-on-one. So I got the WIDI U-Host, I got the WIDI Bud Pro, and I got the WIDI Jack. I got so many of them because my intention was to create a whole system where the OPZ connected to 3 different things. It connected to the computer, the piano, and the OP1, or maybe the Digatone or something like that. And my idea was that I would have this kind of group, which I know CME products are supposed to allow. However, my experience is that if I even have just a one-on-one connection and the group mode is enabled on the CME product, the OPZ will drop that connection in about 10 to 15 seconds, and that's not an exaggeration. It's legitimately that fast. So if you just have it where it's just one-on-one, outstanding experience, but you can't have them as a group. I contacted CME about this, and they said it was a teenage engineering issue. I contacted Teenage Engineering. They actually got stuff from CME, and then I feel a little bit bad about this. It's a bit my fault. I just ended up not really wanting to continue to troubleshoot it because I just wanted to move forward and start using my setup. So apologies, a bit of my fault there that I don't have a good, solid answer for you about what that, about what does and doesn't work there or how you might get things to work. So all of that to say, I like all of these ways of connecting an external keyboard. I highly recommend that you use your OPZ with an external keyboard if that's an option to you, just because I find it just to be much easier to perform and much easier to correct notes and control velocity and things like that. So I hope that you found this helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.